Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. So today we're going to talk about Sustanon 250. But before we get into that, I want to reiterate that I am not a doctor, and all of this information is for your entertainment purposes only. I am not insinuating nor advising you to use any of the things that I discuss, and whatever you do with this information is completely up to you. So let's get into it. Now, as the name indicates, Sustanon 250 has 250 milligrams of testosterone per 1 milliliter. So by combining 4 different testosterone esters into the mix, the designers of Sustanon 250 were essentially trying to eliminate the peak and trough in blood serum levels that using only a single ester is going to create. So this created one of the best testosterone replacement therapy steroids on the market. Now, the benefits of using Sustanon 250 during a cycle are the same as using any form of testosterone, plus a couple of extra added bonuses because of the fact that of the ester mix. Now, Sustanon can be used less often than other versions of testosterone while still reaping all the main benefits. Benefits like, increased muscle mass, increased strength, increased libido, improved recovery after each training session, everything that we know that testosterone does for you. Now, since Sustanon is composed of 4 different ester chains that release at different times, a user does not experience the same abrupt peak and sharp decline when compared to using other esters. So the consistency and levels of testosterone actually help to minimize the chances of estrogen spikes and severe HPTA suppression. So, although long and persistent use of any type of testosterone will cause side effects, Sustanon is considered by many bodybuilders to be responsible for less abrupt sides. That's debatable, but that's what a lot of people think and assume. This is a myth, in fact, and it has the same side effects as any other testosterone ester, but hey, if you feel that way and your mind's working that way, so be it. So let's talk about esters. Now, all esters have a half-life. So the release of the steroid from the ester will peak and decline at different times depending on the ester chain itself. So let's think of it this way. Think of it as a sharp increase followed by a sharp decline in blood serum levels of the steroid being used. This can be a couple of hours or even a couple of days. So like all steroids, testosterone on its own has a very short half-life. And as a result, manufacturers of synthetic testosterone go ahead and use a chemical process to then attach an ester chain to the testosterone base. So the attachment of the ester chain to the actual hormone makes it oil soluble while slowing the rate at which the steroid leaves the body. So as a result, testosterone cannot attach to the androgen receptors until the ester chain has been cleaved off from the hormone. Now, in the end, adding the ester chain makes the steroid more manageable for dosing because the shot frequency then goes down to only a couple times per week. This is compared to several daily shots if the base hormone was being injected. The base hormone without an ester chain will actually be in and out of the body in only a few hours. So this obviously isn't going to work. This forces the users to take several daily shots in order to run an effective cycle or TRT treatment, which most people, like 99%, are not going to ever do. So in order to maintain consistency in the release of testosterone from each injection, the designers of Sustanon 250 use 4 esters in the same oil carrier. So the intention in mixing 4 esters is to actually allow for a cascading effect, which uses the different peaks and troughs of the different esters to keep levels fairly steady, or at least steadier. Now, by combining esters of different lengths, they created a somewhat perfect TRT compound, somewhat. Now, the shorter propionate ester will peak quite quickly, while the mid-length ones like phenylpropionate will actually build up, and the shorter to mid-length esters actually decline sharply at the same time. The longer decanate ester is just reaching its peak release. So let's actually discuss the esters involved in Sustanon quickly. Testosterone decanate, there's 100 milligrams of that in there. Now, this is one of the longest esters used in any steroid. It has a very long half-life, over 2 weeks, around 15 days. Which actually means the active life of the ester is almost a month. So in simple terms, from the time you inject decanate, it actually takes nearly 30 days to leave your system. But you can expect the peak of the ester to be around 11 to 12 days, not 15. So the decanate ester is the main reason Sustanon is considered a once-a-month drug, which it's not. Users tend to think you can inject one injection of Sustanon per month based on the ester alone, which you can't. This is true for TRT, but it's a complete fallacy for bodybuilding. So think of it this way. By the time you get to day, 11 to 15, like 2 weeks in, you peaked and you used up most of the steroids, so you need another injection to keep your blood levels steady. Then we've got testosterone isocaprolate. Now, this ester is a mid-range release ester, and it's used to bridge the gap between the release of propionate and the decanate ester. So since it has a 9-day half-life, I never understood why it was used instead of cypionate or enanthate, which has a similar half-life, but I honestly suspect it has to do with the price. Knowing that Sustanon was designed for TRT, we can actually safely assume that the margins on it are quite high. So it was well known that Organon is making a 500% margin on this steroid, and as a result, using more expensive esters isn't necessary. So why change what works? That's the concept here. If they add the more effective cypionate or enanthate esters, they'll end up shaving margins and losing money. And we wouldn't want to do that, even if it's more beneficial, right? So then there's, and that was 60 milligrams once again. Then there's testosterone phenylpropionate. Now, this is another mid-range ester used to keep testosterone levels steady as the propionate ester disappears from the system and the user waits for the decanate ester to then kick in. Though, some studies have shown that testosterone phenylpropionate has a 5.5-day half-life. It's widely believed that the half-life is around 4.5 days. It's the same as propionate. Again, it's odd that this ester is used when it has a half-life that's very similar to propionate. I believe that the phenylpropionate chain is used because base propionate actually has a shorter half-life than most scientists believe, and it varies from individual to individual, meaning different men process exogenous testosterone differently. As a result, the phenyl version of propionate is added as a safety net for steady testosterone levels. Then we've got testosterone propionate, 30 milligrams. The propionate ester is one of the shortest esters used in any steroid preparation, and it's one of the most popular versions of testosterone that's ever used. When used alone, testosterone propionate should be injected, every other day. In the Sustanon 250 formula, injections can be done weekly since the, phenylpropionate ester and the isocaprolate ester are just, starting their full release as the propionate ester wears out. The reported half-life of propionate is around 4.5 days, but it's believed to be closer to 3 days by many bodybuilders. This might have something to do with the way that the ester is cleaved off by different men with different health levels. So basically, the propionate ester is the base of the Sustanon formula, and it's added as a TRT drug because it gives men with the usual TRT symptoms an immediate boost. So think of it this way. After years of low libido, depression, and weight gain caused by low testosterone levels, you feel great within days of your first Sustanon injection. Therefore, you can call the propionate addition to the Sustanon TRT formula more of a psychological boost more than anything. So, while it's not necessary, some users end up injecting Sustanon every 3 days. They tend to feel that it helps them take advantage of the propionate ester and keeps a more consistent release of the drug. Although the pharmaceutical reason for the 4 esters was actually to spare the user multiple shots per week, it does seem bodybuilders think the best way to do this is every 3 days. However, this is not the best way to dose Sustanon. The most optimal injection schedule is actually every 5 days, and in fact, most users will inject once a week without any issues. I tend to tell people twice a week, but every 5 days is generally, on paper, the best way to do this. Your dosing, it depends. Everybody's different. I've done a video on how much testosterone you actually need in terms of per week. Everybody's different, so 500 milligrams is what you're always going to find people to always be like their go-to number, which it doesn't have to be. And I always say that there's no reason to ever go over 500 milligrams. Some people disagree. I tend to recommend 350 to 400. Everybody's different. So what you do with that is completely up to you. Now, side effects are consistent with side effects of any testosterone. All right, they include water retention, gynecomastia, because testosterone does convert to estrogen. There's also risks like, hair loss. If you're prone to MPB, that could happen. Swelling of the prostate, mainly from testosterone's conversion to DHT. But these are just general normal side effects that you can expect with testosterone. They're the same for Sustanon as they are with any other form. So half-life, the decanate, like I said, 15 days. Isocapronate, 9 days. Phenylpropionate, 4.5. Propionate, 4.5. And we went over all of this already. So that, my friends, is Sustanon. I know this was a longer video. We had to cover all the facts. I wanted to really explain the esters, the different esters, and also explain, what esters were. I don't like to use terminology that people don't understand. So, that being said, www.icearms.com/forums. I'm also on the Elite Fitness Forum and the Evolutionary Forum. Dylan@icearms.com is where you can email me with all questions and comments. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.